Hello, and a warm welcome to SALTO Digital Dialogues. My name is Juha Toipul-Kiviniemi, and as always, I will be your host today. In case you are new here, a very quick intro on what it is that we do here. So, SALTO Digital Spotlight is aimed for digital contact points in national agencies of the Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps programs, as well as other national agency staff. But these are also available afterwards as recordings on YouTube, and any interested stakeholders in all sectors are warmly welcome to use this content as they wish. Our goal here is to give new viewpoints to how technology can be applied in education, as well as the youth sector, and especially in the context of Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps programs. Here, we don't talk so much about technology itself, nor do we talk about specific platforms or specific pieces of digital hardware, but rather we talk about how technology can be applied to education and youth work, and especially what added value it can bring as an approach. If you find this content relevant, please do share as broadly as possible with any potentially interested colleagues or people you know. And we always welcome new topics into the series that you would find interesting for us to talk about around digital transformation, education, and youth work. With that quick intro, today we are talking about digital well-being and sociological perspectives to the well-being of young people. And our guest speakers today are from the University of Helsinki. We have Meri Kulmala and we have Essi Holopainen here. So with that, I welcome our guest speakers, and the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, and lovely to be here. My name is Essi Holopainen, and I'm a doctoral researcher in sociology in the Faculty of Social Sciences in Helsinki, and also in the Interdisciplinary Doctoral School of Social Services.
Hello to everyone. Likewise, it's very nice to be here. My name is Meri Kulmala, and I'm sociologist by education, and I work as a research director at the Faculty of Social Sciences of University of Helsinki, being responsible, among others, running an interdisciplinary network in inequality studies, and I'm also one of the principal investigators in the so-called Tupedu project that we are also talking about more today.
Yes. In today's webinar, we're going to dive a bit deeper into the topic of digital well-being of young people and provide some insights from the latest research, open some key concepts with theory, and also give practical takeaways to the work of national agencies. But next, we're going to open a little bit of the tricky concept of digital well-being of young people. So Moritz Bucci says it well when he asks, how can young people live a good life, both thanks to and despite the constant use of digital media? And he's talking about all the people, but we are asking over here how we can take care of our the well-being of young people in the digital environments and support them when they are trying to find the best ways to support their own well-being. And there are a lot of adult-led, risk-centered and interconnected concerns about the digital everyday life of young people, for example, related to the screen time, excess use of digital media, decrease of physical activities, or offline social interactions. There are also a lot of talk about harms related to mental health, self-esteem, negative comparison, and identity construction, as well as talk about social risks such as cyberbullying, grooming, and privacy issues, as well as cognitive issues, just for example, related to attention, concentration, productivity, and motivation. Still, these issues are quite hard to separate from the everyday life in digitalized society, and many of them concern adults as well. Also, the concerns about youth and risk in digital environments are in many cases cross-wired. And uniquely, young people are positioned as the creators of their own risks to their own digital practices, but also they are subject to risk in everyday settings as a result of being young. So Hankel and Collin argue that seeing young people merely as objects in the need of interventions is also fueling the so-called techno-panics, which on the other hand is leading to various ways to solve these issues by providing maybe too simplistic solutions, just such as phone bans. Young people also form a very specific group on digital platforms, and they form a majority of users on social media platforms, and they are still learning various kinds of skills and creating their healthy habits. They are also forming their identities, both offline and online, and thinking about who they are, what are their desires and preferences, where do they belong, and what is creating the feeling of belonging to them, and who they can relate to and feel that they are among their peers. These kind of processes requires tries and errors, both offline and online, and this can also create certain kind of risks. On the other hand, the digital environments can provide so much opportunities and places for young people to grow, to belong, and to learn more about themselves and the world. We will dive also deeper into this topic a bit later. But what is framing also this specific group is that young people have in many cases participated in the digital education in the education system or underneath the youth work sector, and have been able to talk about these topics with teachers, youth workers, and other professionals who have designed the content to meet the needs of young people and to help them learn the needed skills to navigate in these environments. There are also national and EU level youth-specific policies which are guiding the work of supporting young people in digitalized society. But we also have to remember youth as a non-monolith group with young people with various backgrounds, life experiences, and identities. So we really need intersectional and inclusive approach when we are studying them. So how can we support young people in digitalized society without protecting and patronizing their agency and autonomy too much? As it's framed here, digital risks are embedded in the digital ecosystem where young people are expected to navigate, and that brings inevitable trade-offs. So the harms and benefits go hand in hand and are very situational. The empirical research shows that the impact of digital activities in different platforms varies a lot, also between practices and content, but also between different young people whose uses, motivations, and feelings vary. And for example, the feelings of being empowered but isolated, that's not in common among young people, so they are experiencing both positive and negative feelings at the same time. So the risks and opportunities are not also so black and white, because the existing digital skills can also create more online opportunities and various kinds of benefits, but at the same time expose our young people to more online risks. And on the other hand, young people might be very skilled in the first place to avoid certain risks. For example, they might be able to block suspicious other users in social media platforms, or to recognize fake news or AI images, and they might be more skilled than adults tend to think, or they might have more certain kind of skills and knowledge compared to adults. So how can we aim towards digital benefits despite the digital harms?
Overall, one can say that the research evidence is manifold. They are many, they are various, they are sometimes even contradictory. And in contrast, or better to say alongside to harms and negative effects, there is an increasingly growing body of literature that provides evidence on young people benefiting from online environments and connections, and on skills and capacities of young people to manage their online environments. For instance, Gibson has argued that young people are typically well equipped with the skills and strategies they need to face the risky side of the internet. And in the similar line, and in the very much similar line as we are arguing, Gliniechka argues, based on their research on youth digital health in the context of Reddit, that adults tend to underestimate young people's capacities and resilience, and due to the intense focus on perceived risks, the benefits of the internet for young people are usually ignored. Young people explore, they learn through online environments and connections. They are able to practice creativity. They enhance their social relations and expands their civic engagement in those environments. And this is somewhat similar to the starting point of our own, the so-called Tupado project, in which we have studied together with young people mental health peer support on social media, and found that young people are impactful actors with agency. They are capable of supporting each other by finding, providing, receiving online peer support for their own well-being. But we will get back to this our own research a bit later in our presentation today. Also, there is a body of literature that speaks about the positive correlation of the quality of online social relations. For instance, Steinbeck and colleagues have found that increased or active social media use actually predicts spending more time with friends online. In other words, social media use may promote offline interaction with friends during the adolescence. But it's also notable that increased social media use may pose a risk for reduced social skills in socially anxious individuals. And a bit similarly, Angelini and their colleagues found that while social media can reinforce friendship, its benefits largely rely on pre-existing relationships. And adolescents with weaker friendships may struggle to use social media to build meaningful relationship, missing opportunities to enhance their connection and potentially further deepening social difficulties. So it's quite kind of a complicated picture. But all in all, in the light of these and similar studies, it seemed to be important in the middle of all harm and concern talk to better recognize the already existing social connections and digital skills of young people, to better target what kind of support is still needed to enhance their digital well-being.
Then a bit more about the theoretical perspectives of digital well-being, because Moritz Bucci has framed it super well that the digital well-being can be conceptualized as subjective well-being in a social environment where the digital media are omnipresent. And this model includes the digital practices, for example, the digital practices of young people which arise within and shape social material structural conditions. And these conditions do not only refer to the technical properties of the digital platforms, but more widely, for example, to social norms and expectations, or popular online trends, or even the emotional atmosphere of different kinds of digital environments. And the harms and benefits are resulting from these practices, as well as the overall well-being is affected by these harms and benefits, which might be harms like negative comparison or disinformation, and benefits like connection, belonging, and proper information.
And somewhat similarly as Pucci, we as sociologists want to emphasize that this kind of a narrow psychological view of digital well-being shifts the responsibility for the individuals. And such an individualistic approach risks ignoring everyday societal and socio-material structures within which individuals act. So even highly individualized attributes such as preferences in digital media use relate to the social structure, which means the conditions in which people live their everyday lives. And this means that individuals are embedded in their social networks and society whose structural trends and technologies both constrain and afford their individual actions. So this is to say that social structures both constrain and enable or provide opportunities for an individual. For instance, we are in very many ways dependent on platform policies and affordances and the means and the ways they are governed. Digitalization has, for instance, on the other hand, provided more tools to democratic participation also for young people. But on the other hand, similar structural mechanisms that shape social inequalities more generally in our societies are present when it comes to digital environments as well. So those are kind of very interconnected environments. And this is very complicated figures and we are not going into details, but we just kind of want to point to the fact that it's very important to understand that both the societal and individual level and also their interplay. So as Bucci argues, considering the role of social structural constraints and opportunities for individual digital practices should be the first analytical step, whereas it is equally important to understand how individuals then use digital media and how this may ultimately affect their well-being. But additionally, we should also focus on the interplay of these levels. In other words, that how digital practices of networked individuals translate back to the social outcomes that again eventually start functioning as structural opportunities and complaints. So it is very complicated kind of interplay of different levels, but we really should pay attention to all of those levels. Another theoretical perspective that we want to put emphasis is socio-materiality, which focuses on the interplay of social and technological components and highlights that digital well-being is a product of so-called socio-material entanglements, and the actions and agency of young people, as in this connection in online environments, must be understood as a part of a socio-material entanglement that actually largely shape young people's practices and agency also in those environments. So this is to say that digital well-being cannot be understood without paying attention also to the role of technology and how it impacts the behavior of young people or anyone in those environments. So in this respect, we also want to highlight kind of a post-digital as a promising research paradigm. And with the term post-digital, we refer to investigations which focus on how the online and offline in practice are entangled, and the framework also in very promising way, in our opinion, addresses the false binary between digital and real life. So this kind of framework refers to this kind of a period after the widespread adoption of the digital technologies, where these tools are so fully integrated into our lives that they cannot be anymore seen as novel or distinct, but rather as normal and kind of an inevitable part of the physical and social world.
We also have to remember that the digital habits and practices of young people, they're not only related to the private digital leisure, like social media use and network site use and gaming, but the overall digital ecosystem, which is including healthcare, education, employment, governance, and social development. The cultural and societal norms and expectations have also a lot of impacts to the digital well-being of young people. For example, the expectations related to availability and productivity, they do not only mean that young people expect each other to be active in the group chats or continue the Snapchat streak in their leisure time, but they're very well presented in the education system and in the work life. The digital multitasking concerns also young people who are often expected to know how to use digital services, how to use online participation channels, how to create social media accounts for their workplaces and student organizations, how to run them smoothly, how to help their older relatives with technology, and still with all of these tasks keep healthy digital boundaries, especially during their leisure time, to avoid digital burnout or other harms. So there's kind of like a random combination of different kind of expectations that young people have to face in their everyday digital lives. And it seems that we are most afraid of the digital leisure of young people, although the cultural ideas of success, beauty, lifestyle, as well as productivity and efficiency, they exist offline also without the online representations, although the online representations brings also certain kind of issues and phenomena maybe a bit closer to the users than before. But it also seems that the digital participation of young people should happen by adults' terms, in the structures created by adults, often in the new digital platforms instead of already popular platforms among young people. So we really want to ask how we can support and empower young people in their everyday life, which has become normally operated online, and what kind of skills they need to navigate the overall digital ecosystem, which creates both opportunities and constraints.
Next, we want to turn to our own research on peer support for youth mental health on social media. And we are both involved in the Tupedu research project, which is implemented in collaboration of several Finnish universities and youth mental health NGOs. And the project is funded by the Finnish Research Council. You can actually scan the QR code on the slide to enter our webpage, and there you can learn a bit more about our project. But shortly, Tupedu stands for YouTubers as Peer Mental Health Educators in Adolescent Social Environment. And in the backdrop of the COVID-19, fueling both psychological distress and the use of YouTube by adolescents, the project focuses on how popular YouTubers communicate mental health topics and how adolescents perceive and experience mental health related vlogs and other social media platforms as sources of peer support. And there are several sub-studies conducted under the project, but we are both working in the work package that has widened the focus from YouTube to more generally on social media via the application of co-research as our main research strategy. And co-research is a participatory and multi-perspective approach which values expertise through lived and embodied experiences and considers research participants as impactful agents in the entire research process. And in our research, this has meant that we have invited and recruited young people as co-researchers in our new knowledge co-production on peer support for mental health on social media, seeing young people as the best experts of experience on this topic. And we have worked in a so-called co-research team with 5 young co-researchers, 2 professional researchers, and 1 young researcher based in the University of Helsinki. And we also had a social media communication specialist from 1 youth or student mental health organization. And via co-research and inclusion of young people in our research team, we wanted to produce a bit more inclusive and youth-led perspective to peer support for mental health in the context of social media. And our researchers have indeed played a great role in designing and implementing our research on the topic or question that how social social media may act as a potential source for peer support for young people and thus potentially contribute to their overall and mental well-being. And young people have also participated in the dissemination of our findings. In our Tuperu research, we have found that young people accumulate various resources on social media that can support their well-being. These resources can be, for instance, knowledge, skills, relationships, and they can be understood as the so-called mental health capital. And here we refer to Pierre Bourdieu's work on different kinds of capitals that people do accumulate. And this kind of mental health capital includes social dimension, which receiving and providing peer support. It refers to different kinds of social skills that young people developed in those environments. And it is about building and joining peer communities, or just seeing that someone like me might struggle with similar issues. It also includes cultural dimension in the line of Pierre Bourdieu's cultural capital, and that refers to gaining mental health related skills and knowledge. Young people, for instance, get useful mental health related information online, which actually might serve as a catalyst for seeking assistance. This kind of a mental health capital also includes emotional dimension, which refers to the development of different kinds of emotional skills through peer exchange of emotional experiences, moral support, and encouragements. And actually, these dimensions together create a whole that provides individuals and communities with better capacities to promote and maintain mental health, and that's how it also strengthens and enables agency agency of young people for their own well-being.
Another key finding from our study is the importance of peer connection and peer support especially. And we see the peer support as comforting and empowering relatedness and shared knowledge among peers. And this can take forms of informational support, emotional support, and affirmational support. And by informational support that young people are providing to each other and receiving from each other in social media is, for example, information about diagnoses, terminology, tips and advice regarding to the symptoms and living with them, as well as information about services and how to access them, as Mary mentioned. The emotional support is more about the feelings of being seen, heard, and understood by other users and expressions of comfort and care. And young people are able to enhance each other's feeling of belonging and foster the feeling of being accepted by others. And they're also providing hope for the future in their content in social media. The affirmational support is separate from this and more like an empowering, motivating, and encouraging form of support, which is also normalizing certain mental health issues and the conversation about them and breaking the stigma around mental health issues. And this can be also seen as a form of online activism in a way. But these all forms share one key feature, which is a relatability, because what young people can relate to each other is that kind of like a creation moment of peer support in social media, because the content can be helpful and supportive also without being perceived as peer support. So we think that peer support is fundamentally a combination of emotional, informational, and affirmational aspects, which are significantly affected by young people's recognition of similarity and relatedness in others. This is one great example from our data, and we just want to show how these different kind of forms of support are also interconnected with each other. And I will read it aloud here. What is so lovely is that through social media, those people who may have not known how to get help to deal with certain kind of symptoms have been able to seek help. Because, for example, ADHD as a disorder is like that. It's a huge thing to get the information, but maybe I'm just not lazy and stupid, but maybe I really have some real issues. When I was studying in upper elementary school, it was so relieving to be able to see outside of my friend circle of the peers in the same small town. So it's really so that elsewhere in this world, young people of my age have similar struggles. So it's not just my thing. It was so wonderful that I was able to see these survival stories and such, that there are people who have faced something really difficult, that they have been able to get over it in a constructive way, and that then integrate their own history to it, like how they are nowadays, and then use these certain experiences as resources. So somehow through that, it's possible to mirror those experiences and receive hope towards the future and such. So maybe this is not, or maybe this can turn out to be just fine, and you can get something from it. So as it's framed in this quote, which is kind of like combining almost all of the elements that we are looking for in our study, peer support in social media is seen, for example, as a possibility to get help with certain kind of symptoms, and an empowering way to interact with others and learn more, a tool for normalizing certain issues and symptoms, and an emotionally relieving way to find out that elsewhere in this world, young people of my age, they have similar struggles. It's also a way to build hope and a possibility to see that other young people have been able to get over their struggles in a constructive way. And it's also a mirror to others' experiences and a reminder that the current struggles will also pass and things can turn out to be just fine in the future. So, social media is used to receive and provide peer support in very personal and situational ways, according to the needs of young people and what they consider relatable. And what some young people consider as supportive, it may be a different case with other young people. So it's very situational with timing, the current mood of young people, and other situational aspects. But we want to state that social media offers multiple ways to participate in supportive interaction, but a remarkable part of the private use, like one-to-one messaging between young people, remains hidden if we only look at the public use, for example, the public posts available for all the users. Here's another great example of from our data, but an example of the private use of social media to provide peer support to others. The first young person says that I think the greatest way how memes might work or might be good for your mental health is that you send them back and forth with your friends, and you can try to comfort them or make them laugh and just to have a connection with them. And the other young person continues, yes, absolutely. That's what memes are for. They are pictures and videos that you can share with others, and that's a completely different case if you sit alone at home and scroll the memes than if your friend sends you a video and writes you. So this is one of our conclusions, that peer support challenges the ways of seeing social media use as passive scrolling because it requires the reactivity, the affective reaction toward the shared content among friends and peers.
To sum up, much of our research points to strong evidence that young people are very skillful agents when operating in the online environments for their own well-being. And such a proactive agency manifests itself, for instance, in creating and joining peer communities, and these communities can be around, for instance, different diagnoses, symptoms, or different minoritized positions. Actually, our research shows that this kind of online peer communities are in particular important for different minorities, that young people can kind of find their peers. And especially minorities who live in smaller places, and they do not necessarily have in their close circles anyone who is kind of like you, that this really plays a huge difference to them. It also this kind of agency manifests itself in the creation of the so-called positive social media bubbles. Young people are very active in seeking contents that promote their own well-being, while they are active in blocking the harmful contents that they do see that this does not support my own well-being. They are active in blocking people also who they feel that this is not supportive for me. And actually they are very skillful agents also in training the algorithm to serve for their own interests. Yet we want to emphasize that it is important to know that there are inequalities that intersect with the social position of a young person, and consequently their agentic ability to manage their online environments, as this requires many kinds of skills and resources. And obviously we can understand that some young people are better equipped with those resources than the others. And this actually leads to the importance of inventing ways that how to equip young people with necessary resources then to overcome this kind of inequalities. It is important also to note that young people's concerns and activities concerning mental health extends to the wider societal level as well. Young people often consider their own position and mental health challenges in the context of structural and wider societal factors. Young people are very aware and also contest the adult-led dominant discourses on mental health, and they also actively engage in the stigmatization of mental health and related issues in our society. Here you can see a list of our publications under the Tupadu project. So this is still ongoing project, so there are not that many publications yet published, but there are lots of ongoing work and hopefully soon to be published articles. So they are listed here. And then we've had also a couple of master students in our team who have produced their wonderful MA theses on the topic. Unfortunately, those are mainly in Finnish, but we wanted to mention them here as well. Then I'd like to put emphasis also that we have produced several other than scientific publications and outputs as well. So our young people, young co-researchers have been active in writing blogs, and we've conducted a couple of podcasts with them. Those are unfortunately in Finnish too, but actually you can find a full list of publication on the website of our project that you can access via the QR code that was presented earlier.
Yeah, how to sum up a bit of what we've been talking over here and how we can really support the digital well-being of young people. And maybe the list is not like the overall check of like what has to be done and where to put the focus on, but we would like to emphasize that first we need to understand how deeply interconnected the digital well-being of young people is to their overall well-being. And we think that it's super important to support their emotional and social skills, their relationships, and their sense of belonging, and focus on providing inclusive education and also employment. We think that the overall well-being of young people is best enhanced and supported across different societal fields and spheres, and by targeting the socioeconomic inequalities, by creating better and low threshold services and providing hope for the future. We also think that we need to enhance the digital skills of young people and not only related to the safety and privacy issues, but more broadly to the emotional, cognitive, and social well-being of young people. For example, how young people can find the support they need online, how they can build their identities, be creative, and foster their sense of belonging in different digital environments. We also truly have to enhance the digital agency of young peoples and focus on their participation in decision-making, in research, and in designing and developing new technical solutions and platforms. We also have to recognize their already existing digital competence of young people and trust that the protection, empowerment, and participation go hand in hand, like it's stated in the EU Better Internet for Kids strategy, for example. So in a nutshell, we think that digital well-being of young people results from healthy digital habits, safe environments, accessible and inclusive participation, supportive social connections, privacy and boundaries, and the feelings of agency and autonomy. But yet we have to learn from and with young people themselves what is causing problems and harms in digitalized society and what elements of it are enhancing their well-being. This is a long slide, and we're not going to read through it completely, but we would like to include the perspective of accountability and responsibilities of the platforms to this discussion, because it's not only the responsibility of the users to think about their own well-being, but also the responsibility of the platforms to do really the assessing and mitigation work of their online harms and tailoring interventions to very specific risks which are existing online. Amy Orban says that the techno-panics reincarnate again and again with new technology like AI at the moment, because the pace of doing science is much more slower than the technical development. And we think that responsibly done research about social media use of young people should be done by differentiating platforms, styles, motives of use, the content and the users, as well as to think which kind of results can be generalized. So what to really say about the specific data which is used. And on the other hand, we really have to focus on more how to keep the tech industries responsible of their own products. And as Jabra and colleagues argue, there is a pressing need for coordinated, evidence-informed action for policymakers and platforms, particularly as discourse surrounding social media and youth mental health continues to intensify and outpace regulatory and industry responses. And the proposals to ban young people from social media risks diverting attentions to the more complex but essential tasks of creating safer and more supportive digital environments. So there is still really a need for legislating and overseeing accountability of these platforms, need for transparency, collaboration with different stakeholders, and creation of safety by design platforms. And there's still so much to do. So some aspects for takeaways and our recommendations to enhance the digital well-being of young people as a stakeholder. So we would like to encourage you to encourage your funding applicants to involve your participants as project members, as co-researchers, or as the members of the steering committees. Also to thematically consider the digital agency, digital empowerment, and the enhancement of digital literacy skills of young people. And conceptually consider the various aspects of digital well-being, including environments, for example, the formal one or the leisure ones, different actions in digital environments, the feelings of young people, their social connections, and the structural elements. And also to create concrete tools and other solutions which enhance the digital inclusivity, accessibility, safety, and participation among young people. And to utilize the already existing and good policy publications, for example, Digital Education Action Plan and Better Internet for Kids strategy. We also encourage you to encourage them to build supportive networks across the sectors and borders to discuss about these topics, because these are not the simplest one. So this really needs common discussion.
And our kind of a final takeaway message to kind of to try to summarize it into 4 points that surprise, surprise, digitalized societies are here to stay. So we really need to overcome the false binary between the digital and real life. And this is something that our young people emphasize. They cannot understand the separation of their digital life from the real life. And I think that this needs to be taken seriously. We also need to understand that it's exactly the same phenomena online and offline. And this is in good and in bad. As we saw earlier, there is a correlation of social relationships offline and online, which is, it seems that there is a positive correlation of those fields. But also kind of they are the same phenomena in bad. So it is exactly the same issues that concern young people in our kind of offline world. That is the climate change, that is the pressures that young people have in their lives. So they exist in all these environments that are in the connected. Then the second point is that as hopefully already seen, that young people really are resourceful and skillful agents, yet they are unequally positioned. So we want to emphasize the importance of recognizing this, recognizing the agency of young people, and recognizing already their skills and what does it take to have those skills and agency. We also want to emphasize the importance to kind of capacity building of young people instead of banning kind of use of digital technologies and such alike. And also we want to emphasize the importance of balancing the existing inequalities, that to really think that what does it take from a young people to be skillful and powerful agent in this environment, and then to try to build support that helps to build such capacities.
And last but not least, we really want to address that nothing without young people themselves. So there is a huge importance of the involvement of young people in policymaking, in research, while doing innovation, when designing different kind of solutions. And it should be a bigger responsibility of the policymakers and the tech industries to create and provide safer and more supportive digital environments for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this very thought-provoking presentation of your project and the topic matter of the project. Couple of thoughts from that I really kind of latch onto from what you were speaking about was that really emphasizing that young people and learners are not one mass. We tend to kind of generalize when we implement projects, and also when we speak about these topics, that young people are like this, or adult learners are like this, and higher education learners are like this. But rather, this really highlights the importance of participation within and inclusion within every project and every kind of activity, so that it really keeps a level playing field. I also really like this concept of societal level of digital well-being, because I think it ties really well into our programs, in the sense that it really ties together this skill and competence development within digital transformation, kind of as a project topic, as well as this kind of systemic change, advocating and developing better practices in all sectors and all fields. And I think, because we in SALTO Digital, we work cross-sectorally, I think this also resonates with me, because I feel that you spoke about digital skills and digital competences, and that's maybe more familiar as a topic for the educational sectors, whereas digital agency would be something very kind of familiar and very kind of easy to approach for the youth field. So I feel like there is really a lot of opportunities for cross-sectoral approaches here. Finally, I wanted to highlight from my own perspective that I like that research, for example, this Evans and Ringrose, the interplay of social and technological components, kind of affirming a message that youth sector has been already preaching for a long time, that young people do not separate online or digital and real life environments. So this is something that keeps repeating over the years. I do have 2 questions for you, which you can answer from your own perspective. So going back to kind of like basics, if someone would want to tackle the topic of digital well-being in a project, whether it's a youth mobility project or educational sector key action 2 strategic partnership, whether small scale or larger partnership, where would you start from? What do you need to kind of figure out first?
I
Good
think,
question.
yeah, I think that this is really good questions, and of course there is kind of lots of things that I think that, or we think that one should do, of course, kind of depending on the topic, to kind of, as I hope that our presentation showed, that how much there is research and knowledge on the topic. So kind of deep into that to kind of understand that what kinds of knowledge there already is, but we wouldn't or couldn't be kind of more emphasize the importance of involving young people at a very early stages of the project or whatever plan you have, as I tried to emphasize in when kind of laying out that what we mean as co-research, for instance, is the whole kind of entire research project, that we have to involve young people from the very beginning. So for instance, in our Tupero project, we of course had the overall topic that it's about mental health, it's about young people, it's about peer support, and it's about social media, but that was it. Then we went kind of invited young people to discuss with us that how these things connect in your life and in your mind, and kind of that what would be your kind of a position towards these issues and interconnection of them. And I have to say honestly that we ended up asking very different questions in our research when we got that input from young people, that if it had been kind of adult led, our questions, our research design, and then ultimately our findings would have been very different without the input of young people in very early stages of the process.
I would add shortly that what you did was that you were also asking from your young participants how they are describing certain concepts. For example, how they describe what is mental health, what they mean by mental health. And I think that's like one part of the solution, when like either it's like one small project or it's like cross-sectional projects among like different sectors of the society. It's very important to have the conversation about the concepts. What do we mean about digital platforms? About like what is social media? Is it like specific platforms? Is it something else? What is mental health? What is well-being? What are the issues that we are focusing on and trying to make better? So I think those kind of like pre-conversations are super important when doing any kind of projects.
Yeah. We are almost out of time, but I do want to connect a little bit with other program priorities as well. I know you've already broached this, but since participation and inclusion are also priorities in the program, and I think green sustainability also connects to this digital well-being and mental well-being, because young people have a lot of anxiety also about environmental issues. So there is a connection there as well. So how important do you see this if someone would be implementing a project around the theme of digital well-being? How important do you think it is to really consciously make connections to inclusion and participation as well as priorities?
It's very important to kind of try to understand that the kind of a youth perspective on the topics that are in or discussing. And I think that this kind of understanding cannot be reached without inclusion of young people in those processes, that there are so much kind of or adult talk in this society that would it be on climate change, would it be on mental health, but in our research, as Essi was referring in just in her response, that the whole kind of understanding of mental health was something very different to young people, and they kind of considered that adult-led talk on mental health is very negative, but they wanted to see mental health as a resource. And I think that that's a continuum, that it's not something that you have or you don't have, that kind of digging into the kind of logic of young people in kind of understanding or seeing those issues are big issues in our societies. I think that it really makes difference that we can then kind of take those as a starting points and not kind of us as adults and how we tend to think that young people think.
Exactly. Because, like, for example, this is just a short comment, but like climate anxiety, that's also a very adult-led term, because we consider that young people are worried about climate change and they are anxious. But young people might talk about emotions related to those issues, and there might be other kind of emotions as well, like sadness and also empowerment when they are active offline and online and like going to demonstrations. So issues are not so black and white, and we really have to ask from young people what they consider, what is important, and where should we focus.
That's a very good thought to end on. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invitation to be here.
It was lovely.